Hey, let's talk about games.
Good afternoon, my friend, and welcome to a video talking about Wrath and Glory, the character creation process. Now, in this video, I'm going to be going through a live character creation with you. We're not going to be doing all of the numbers, all of the maths. We're just going to go through sort of the meta process, the decision-making, the attributes, all of that stuff, the ascension, talking about how all this works and how it all ties together. We're not going to be able to, and I'm not going to be able to show you all of the graphs and numbers so you can start making your own characters. Guys, copyright laws do exist. Pre-order the game, you get the PDF, buy the game, it's brilliant, it's wonderful, but hopefully this video will still be useful for you if you want to know more about the game, or you want to drum up a little bit of hype, or you just want to be thinking about making characters and sort of getting that grey matter working a little bit. So, before you do a character creation, you kind of need to know the framework of the game. Are you going to be playing Orcs? Are you going to be playing Elder? Are you playing a high-tiered sort of, I don't know, Deathwatch kill team? Or are you going to be Underhive scum that can barely tell your ass from your elbow? You need to know these details before you start making a character. So talk to your GM, talk to him. Make sure you've got that sorted. So for us, we're going to be playing tier 4 because we want lots of Astartes, and we want I want my character to get promoted into being a full-blown Inquisitor halfway through the campaign. That's my narrative goal, is to become a full-blown Inquisitor. Prior to that, we're going to have to be something else. So that puts us at about the 4th tier. So the question is, what am I going to play first of all? So I'm going to be a human. That gives me the benefits of eating, sleeping and pooping and not a lot else. Humans are kind of the baseline, so cheap to be because you don't get any bonuses. That's fine by me. I'm just a human. We're going to be an Acolyte as well. Now the Acolyte itself is really, really flexible. You can ascend it up to any tier. You can do that with any of the archetypes. You can ascend them upwards. And basically it has a couple of prerequisites to become an Acolyte, but there's very, very easy to meet. Some of the others have more skills. So like to be an Astartes, you will probably need some weapon skill and ballistic skill training. For an Acolyte, you just kind of need a skill of some sorts that's fairly sort of a bit of a skill. It's really, really easy to be one and very, very flexible. So now I'm a human, now I'm an Acolyte, and I've spent the points to do those two things, and actually so far that's actually free. Moving on from there, now we need to ascend, because to get all of the points to basically invest into this ascension, to become a 4th tier character and get the 400 experience points that I would get at that tier, I need to purchase a package. I've got the choice of 2. I can ascend via the normal routes and I'll get some gear, I'll get some influence, I'll get a notable injury, and I'll go up to the appropriate tier and gain access to that experience pool. I'm actually going to go for the Psyker package, which is like the alternative, and that's going to give me access to some minor psychic powers. Obviously the Psyker keyword, which makes me better at doing Psyker things, because keywords are useful for doing tests. It's basically a way of GM saying, does anyone have this keyword? Are you proficient in this? So I'm going to go that route. It doesn't give me any equipment. That's fine by me. I can pick that up at a later date. So I've purchased that will cost you an amount of XP depending on how many jumps you're making and where you're jumping to. Not going to go through the numbers and bore you with all that. So there we are. Now we're on to the main stuff. We've got our pool of experience. Meeting the prerequisites for an Acolyte is really easy. So now we have some choices ahead of us. Oh boy, what are we going to spend all this on? Well, attributes I think are a great place to start. So I wouldn't say there's any particular formula, although in the book there are some suggestions as to here's how much it costs and here's how many points you get to play with. It costs just as much to upgrade your strength as it does your agility. But obviously the cost goes up each time. Now you'll notice I've gone for strength 5, agility 2, toughness 7, intellect 5, willpower 7, fellowship 7, initiative 5. So that gives you an inkling as to what I want my character to be. I want to be fairly strong. I'm not fussed about agile. I want to be really tough. I want to be quite sociable and also very, very gritty with willpower. Let's go through each of these and do a very brief overview. So strength obviously translates directly into weapon damage when you whack stuff. Strength is also obviously sort of athletics, running around, that type of thing. Agility, kind of as it says on the tin, is not based on dodging in this. Doesn't govern defense, mitigation, that sort of thing. Agility is more how good you are at shooting stuff and how good you are at doing some sort of sneaky things. Now, moving on from there, so obviously that doesn't bother me because I'm actually wanting to be a melee. Toughness, again, like most games, will go into a bit of damage mitigation. That's handy to have. Also governs wounds and things of that nature. Doubly useful. Also governs how much you can soak damage, which is an additional mitigation where you can put stuff into shock and eventually you'll get exhausted and run out of shock. But think of it like a shield of extra stamina that you have, that basically if you've got a big one, shield, that can be absorbed, and that's all very useful and wonderful. So it's an extra mitigation mechanic, which I really, really like. So that's wonderful. I really want to be that because I'm going to be a bit of a melee orientated character. Wunderbar. Intellect of 5. Why have I gone for this? I'm not entirely sure. I think actually because some of the skills over here, I like the idea of, we've got Scholar. If we scroll down a little bit, Scholar's going to be fairly useful. Investigations. I am an Inquisitor, so I can't be terrible. And the way that these skills will interact with the attributes is the two pools get added together, which is something I really like. If your intellect is terrible, but you really still want to be good at tech, you can actually be that character. You don't have to have both to be competent. It will be quite expensive, though. There's obviously a sweet spot with the ramping costs where actually leveling up your tech to a certain point will get to the point where actually making your intellect better is going to be more efficient. That's up to you guys to do the maths. I've made some graphs, figured out, crunched the numbers, found out some rough sweet spots, but I don't feel like we can share that information without breaching some copyright laws. So, what else have we gone into? Bit of Psychic Mastery, obviously makes a bit of sense. We've gone for Scholar. You've noticed I put a lot of 3s in things over here. Why? Because it's quite cheap to do. I love this system. It's really, really cheap. Oh, go on, I'll give you a little spoiler. 1 point, 1 XP. That's how cheap it is to get started. It's really easy to splash out some early skill points, make your character fairly versatile. I really, really like that within this system. So I've got all my points over on the left, all of this stuff on the right, and my character is looking pretty darn juicy. Now, you're probably saying, well, Heidel, what about traits? What about traits indeed? Well, traits will range from about 25 to 40 experience, and they represent the usual sort of talents that you can get. It could be anything from having an airstrike you could call in once per session, and that's pretty awesome. It could be to sacrifice a follower to gain a wrath. And by the way, you can have a mob follow you around if you are that way inclined. Now, these are quite expensive, and I just want a flushed out character that I can use for now. The traits aren't something that tickled me as of yet, so I actually don't have any on my character. You don't have to have any, and I actually feel that for me, for the build I'm using, they're not really necessary. Now, we haven't quite finished over on the attributes. Let's quickly run through the rest. Willpower. That's obviously going to be your usual mental resolve type characteristics, and also your ability to sort of govern or your pool of shock. So how much grit you have as a character, how much of that fatigue stamina pool, extra damage you can soak into that so you can keep on going for longer. Willpower is pretty useful for that. It's also obviously revolving around the psychic whole thing, so that's going to be nice. That's going to be very, very handy. Now, you're probably wondering, Fellowship, that's obvious. We don't need to talk about that. That governs all the fellowship stuff. It's just sociability. Nice and simple. What about initiative? Well, initiative goes into combine with weapon skill. So that's going to add up and do some melee whacking. All very well and good. But it's also governing your defense. So quite nice to have. Although my general feeling on this game actually is my defense in this character is 4. If anything has 10 attack dice, I'm getting hit. So it's going to make mobs have a hard time hitting me, but it's going to make actually some of the good stuff. I'm not sure about this right now. I didn't feel like investing into it was for me. I'm happy having a force weapon, having a particularly high melee based damage with the strength and willpower. Willpower might also help out force weapons when you're bashing them, and just whacking stuff in melee. That's my plan. That's where I'm at. Now, what else do we have to do with this character? We're pretty much done. We've got a couple of free psychic abilities. I've gone for 3 in particular. I'm going to give you a verbal description of them. Not all of the rules, but we have Command, which is a very short range ability to give a simple instruction. Simple instruction being something along the lines of take your weapon out, put your weapon away, drop your weapon. Can't get people to kill themselves anymore. It's a simple one-line command and something that the character can easily do. Now, obviously, there are psychic tests involved to be able to do all these things. We're not going to go in all the mechanics today, but that's the first of the actual 4 abilities I've picked up. I did actually pay for a couple with experience, or build points as they're called. So that's 1. We've also gone for Fortune, which basically gives me extra dice on a roll. It looks a little bit broken. I'm expecting that one to be balanced. You basically use the warp to get lucky. And by the looks of it, you can do as often as you damn well like. Me, I've actually proposed to my GM that we can only limit this to once every hour. That feels a little bit more balanced to me. I mean, there's a certain attractiveness to basically doing that before an influence check to get some gear. Perils of the warp, the shopkeeper gets eaten by a demon. Free stuff, maybe not. So that's definitely a thing as well. And we've also got a weapon jam ability, which I really like. It's if you've read Eisenhorn, the bolt pistols coming at him, the psychic crystals, warp crystals form in the weapon, jam the mechanism, prevent it from firing. Eisenhorn Mark II coming at you. So that's where we're going thus far. And of course, you will have some gear dependent on the character. You'll have some gear that might come from the Ascension packages, and that's going to help you equip. Psychers don't get quite as much love as the other package, but this is pretty much the decisions you've got to play with. Are you going to be a little bit of, I'd say, an attribute whore? Are you just going to go for really, really high toughness? And it does get expensive the higher you go. Do you want to go for loads of skills? You can see for my character that I feel, for a tier 4, I've made someone that's bloody versatile. I can do everything I want to do. I can hit stuff hard. I can take hits. I can mitigate hits via the shock mechanic and soak mechanic pretty darn well. There is also an additional explanation as to why I have a whopping 14 shock over there. That's to do with some other background bonuses that I feel that we should probably leave to another time. But also, I've got all of these skills, so you combine something like my fellowship and my cunning. I've got 10 dice, which means a challenging task of 7 difficulty is kind of 50-50 if I might pass it, and that's not bad. That's not bad. This character's pretty darn versatile. That's without even getting assists from people, and that is pretty much the character creation process within this. You will just run through it with you again. You will pick your species, you will pick your archetype, you will probably then need to make sure you've met your prerequisites, and then you will need to purchase an Ascension package if that is appropriate for you. Don't have to purchase the Ascension package, but you won't get access to all that juicy experience for the appropriate tier if you don't. At least that's how I believe it works. I could be wrong. And then you have all this XP to throw around. Now bear in mind again, this is a tier 4 game, so these characters are supposed to be fleshed out. They are supposed to be pretty darn good, and that's kind of how I feel about the Inquisitor. And I tell you what, the only other roleplay game I've played is Dark Heresy, and straight away I have fallen in love with this system. A few closing remarks now. I've fallen in love with this system because I've made a character that can do all the things I want him to do, but doesn't feel that overpowered. Maybe you could argue it's a bit too versatile. He can do all of these things. He can talk to people. I can intimidate. My leadership's pretty good. My Medicaid's not great, but it's not bad. I can do basic tasks because I'm fairly intelligent. But to me, that makes sense. I'm an Inquisitor, not a one-trick pony. I should be able to do lots of things. I shouldn't be absolutely crap half of the everyday life skills that would be required within the Inquisition. So that's how I'm feeling about it right now, but I'd love to know what you think. Is this a bit too versatile? Do I have too much stuff going on? I ain't changing it. I love Thaddeus. But what do you think? Do you think it's much, much more interesting to have limitations imposed on you by systems such as the... What was the keyword system from Dark Heresy? It'll come back to me. The attributes. I think they were called attributes. Yeah, they were. So basically you had some of those per character, and that determined the cost of things. So you would find things cheaper, some things would be more expensive, and that sort of governed, or at least really pushed you in what direction you were going to go. If not, it was just going to be about 4 or 5 times slower. This is really just... You got some points, buddy. Spend them where you like. And I love it because I've been able to create my vision of a character unimpeded, without any issues. And because I think the traits are quite expensive, 40 XP for some of them, I don't think you can make these monstrous combinations that will just one-hit everything. As far as I can see, there are no combinations where it's like Lightning Strike from Dark Heresy. It's like, oh, you're a melee? Oh, you don't have Lightning Strike? Oh, how's it feel? Like, how does the impending doom feel because you've made some poor life choices? Maybe Lightning Strike wasn't mandatory, but it was so damn good in Dark Heresy. If you didn't take it, I felt like you were a bit of a muppet. In this game, I feel like I've got loads of choices. Maybe it's a little bit soupy where the choices aren't quite as meaningful. There aren't any any abilities that will turn and revolutionize how your character works. They will just give advantages to certain situations. But again, once you got the book, check it out yourself. Guys, hopefully this video has been useful to you to talk you through the actual process, and I hope you've enjoyed it. If you liked the video, feel free to click the like button. If you disliked it, obviously click the dislike button. Feel free to leave a comment down below, and if you'd like me to talk about other topics regarding this game, leave me a comment down below. Take care, guys. All the best.